So good evening, everyone. Welcome to the weekly webinar series on for the NEC module. So before I introduce the topic, I just want to introduce about our upcoming laser conference, that is a minimally invasive continued online medical education series. We call it the COMET series, and the first module of that is on transoral laser microsurgery. So it's a combined event. Chris O'Brien Lifehouse Hospital, University of Sydney is collaborating with us to host this event. And this event has some very eminent international faculty as well as national faculty. From the international end, we have Professor Peretti, Professor Piazza, and Dr. Francesco from Italy. Professor Carsten Palm and Professor Farouk and Professor Daniel will be participating from Sydney, along with the stalwart national faculty across India. So coming to today's session, so what's happened over the last 10 years or so is that majority of the advanced laryngeal, hypopharyngeal, oropharyngeal cancers are treated with chemoradiation, and we as head and neck surgeon end up doing more of salvage surgery, and it's a very important topic today. And to speak on this, we have a very great speaker, Dr. Devendra Chaukar, from professor and head from Tata Memorial Hospital, and my good friend, Dr. Rudresh, who has done his MS General Surgery from KIMS Hubli, and later on done his MCH Surgical Oncology from Tata Memorial Hospital to moderate this event. So over to Rudresh to moderate this session and take it forward.
Thanks, Akshay. Am I audible?
Yes.
A very good evening to all. I welcome all of you for this Head and Neck weekly webinar series. It is a great initiative by Head and Neck Surgical Oncology Department, SEC, Bangalore, to conduct this webinar series. Today topic is salvage neck dissection, and speaker is Sir Dr. Devendra Chaukar, sir. To brief about, sir is a professor and head of the Department of Head and Neck Surgical Oncology in a prestigious institute, Tata Memorial Hospital, Mumbai. Sir has he's one of the main author of famous N0 trial that we all know that it has redefined the management of N0 neck disease in oral cavity cancers. Sir is my mentor, and I'm proud that I'm moderating a session with my mentor. Sir has a vast experience in head and neck surgical oncology, and sir deals this. We all know that salvage neck dissection is a challenging surgery, and sir deals this challenging surgeries daily. I think his experience and vast knowledge will definitely help us to better management of such challenging surgeries. Now I handed over my session to sir to start the session.
Right. Thank you, Rudresh, and it was great seeing you, Rudresh, after so long. And Akshay, thank you for inviting me to talk on this topic. And I think this is last but one in the series of the neck module. So I think much of it must be covered, and I heard Dr. DeCruz also cover a little bit on salvage neck. So I'll just start sharing my screen now. Just give me a minute. Are you able to see my screen? Yeah, Rudresh?
Yes, sir.
Can you see the screen and hear me now?
Yes, yes, sir. I can hear you, sir.
Right. So we'll begin our talk today. The topic given to me was salvage neck dissection, a new normal for head and neck surgeons. In short, if I have to answer this, I would say yes, in the majority of the sites in head and neck. They have undergone a sea change, as Akshay said. We have seen a lot of changes in the last couple of decades. So we all know that traditionally, many sites were managed non-surgically, either because they were inherently responsive to radiation, like the nasopharynx, or there was high morbidity associated with surgery, such as oropharynx. You had early tumors which were responsive to surgery and radiation and gave equal control rates, such as the early glottic and supraglottic tumors. And then in the 90s and the early 2000s, we saw a paradigm shift in treatment of laryngeal and hypopharyngeal cancers, the advanced laryngeal and hypopharyngeal cancers, with the emergence of organ preservation protocols. And all of you, I'm sure, are aware of the two trials that changed the management of laryngeal cancer. The first was the 1991 VA trial, which looked at the role of induction chemotherapy followed by radiation therapy, and they could save about 64% of the larynx without compromising survival. This was followed by the RTOG 9111 trial, which told us that the combination of CTRT was much better in larynx preservation. So what was happening was that we were moving away, excepting from probably oral cancers, which was then in the hands of the surgeons, we were moving away in most sites to first giving radiation or chemoradiation, trying to preserve the organ, and doing surgery as salvage. When these trials were reported, the major focus was on larynx preservation rate, and also these trials, the subsequent publications, focused on salvage settings, but for the primary, and not much was written about the nodes, primarily because many of these patients who were included in the trials were early neck nodal disease. So today we will focus on what happens if you have large neck nodes. What do you do? Whether you operate them first, you operate them later, you don't need to operate them at all. So we'll look at that in this talk. So I'm going to take you through a little bit of history. I'm going to talk of the era of where we treated patients only with radiation therapy, and then come on to today's era of CTRT. In the RT alone era, I'll introduce you to a concept called split therapy. Then we'll talk of the role of surgery in N2, N3 disease, whether surgery is required before RT, CTRT or after CTRT. And with the advances in treatment modalities and imaging modalities, whether this surgery is required at all. We'll also look at the differences in treatment for HPV positive versus HPV negative. As you all know, oropharyngeal cancers have the etiology is changed completely in the West. Most of them are HPV positive tumors, and hence we must include a management of neck nodes in these. Do they behave differently from HPV negative? We'll look at that. We'll also have a slide on what happens if the primary fails. If you're going to operate the primary, if that has failed, what do you do with the neck? And finally, we'll look at the extent of neck dissection necessary in the salvage setting. So in the RT era, we all like big things, but RT doesn't like it. Smaller nodes could be controlled by radiation alone. N1, small N2As were controlled by radiation alone. Researchers looked at larger nodes could not be controlled by RT alone, and hence neck dissection had to be added. So RT plus neck was necessary for neck nodes N2B onwards, and some of the large N2A as well. The only decision then was, or the debate was, whether to do the planned neck dissection before giving radiation or after giving radiation. And this debate was intense in mainly tumors which were small in the primary, which were radiocurable as you call it, small tumors T1, T2, and large neck nodes. To give you an example of that, I will draw your attention to the publication from Tata's. My teacher, Dr. De Cruz, published this concept of split therapy, that is planned neck dissection followed by definitive radiotherapy for T1, T2 cancers of the pharyngolarynx. 59 patients were included in the study with large nodal disease N2 and N3. A simple design, retrospective of course, but what they did was they looked at patients with T1, T2 primaries having large nodal disease, the patients which had upfront got neck dissection. And now the point that I want you to remember is that most of the patients who had upfront neck dissection had radical neck dissection. And keep this in mind, because as we go on in my talk, I will tell you why this is necessary. And then the patients after neck dissection went on to receive radiation therapy to the primary and the neck. Of course, because this was done in Indian patients, majority of the patients were hypopharyngeal site and not oropharyngeal site. What the authors reported was they could achieve a good nodal clearance in almost all the patients. 91% of the patients, they could clear the nodes. So it was not difficult to get R0 dissection. It was not even difficult. They could also commence radiation therapy because one of the arguments is that if you operate earlier, then the primary treatment, which is radiation therapy, may get delayed. And I'm going to talk of the pros and cons of operating early versus operating late. But in this paper, they said that patients could be started on radiation therapy with a mean time of 23 days. And the overall treatment time was well within the 100 days, which was 73.5 days. And a fairly good disease-free survival, 54% at 5 years for locally advanced tumors, and an overall survival of 60%. So when you decide to operate the patient before or after RT, the two things are local control and regional local control and complications. So let us look at surgery followed by RT. If you operate first and then give RT, you have a local control with ranges from 7 local failure or regional failure, which ranges from 4 to 13%, and a complication rate of about anywhere between 5 and 16%. What happens if you do surgery after RT? Again, no difference. It's about regional recurrence, again about 17%, and complication rate again in the range of 16-17%. So the complication rate and the recurrence rate, whether you do surgery before RT or you do surgery after RT, is exactly the same. So let us summarize this debate of timing of surgery. Do you do it before or do you do it after? So people who say that you should do it before, the arguments are that radiation usually has a good response to the primary, and the response at the nodes is much lower because these nodes are necrotic. They do not respond to radiation therapy. They have a large necrotic center. As you know, radiation acts on only dividing cells. The necrotic tumor does not respond to radiation, and hence it is lower. So it is better to take out these necrotic nodes, and radiation will act better. There is a challenge of assessing post-radiation, and also all surgeons will agree with me that sometimes surgery following radiation becomes that much more difficult with fibrosis setting in and the planes not being defined too well. A surgery, as I showed you in split therapy, does not compromise on primary tumor control, and you can start radiation therapy within the stipulated period that is necessary. And the advantage of doing surgery before RT is that pathological nodal staging is then available to you. Important in today's era of targeted radiation therapy, if I may call it, like the IMRT, where you know which nodal level was positive, and you can target higher doses to that area while sparing the other levels. These were the arguments that were put for surgery before radiation. Now, people who said that surgery is not necessary before radiation and you must keep it for after radiation therapy said that many of the disease like N1 disease, small N2A disease will be sterilized by RT. You don't need to operate. You're unnecessarily operating on 50% of these cases, which may not require surgery at all. And as I said earlier, the split therapy, if you operate early, majority of them would land up with radical neck dissection as opposed to a more selective neck dissection, and you can save vital structures if you operate post radiation therapy. Now, these were the arguments for and against, and this is for you all to just to understand and have the basics correct, whether to operate before or after. What was happening then was, as we graduated from RT, we had better treatment modalities. The MAC-NC trial and other studies told us that combining chemotherapy to radiation therapy gives you better response rates and control rates. So patients treated with chemoradiation had high likelihood of complete regional response as compared to RT alone. So we were improving our treatment modalities. Yet there was a debate, and people, because of the good response rates, started observing the neck in a few patients. From 93 to 2003, 17 patients by Armstrong, 16 out of 17 who had CR, complete response, were observed with a good control rate. Garden again reported that if we don't operate the patients who had a CR, a clinico-radiological CR, again, no recurrence at 20 months. But look at Brazil. Again, he said that those who had a CR, if you had N2 and N3 disease, the 4-year disease-free survival was 75% if neck is dissected versus 53% if neck is not dissected. So the debate continued, even with CTRT. And the debate was more because the imaging modalities that we had in those days could not pick up a residual disease. So if you had an N2B, then even with CR, you could have a high rate of pathologically positive nodes. So we did not have good modalities to pick up residual disease, and hence we needed to operate this neck. But now the argument of observing the neck was growing stronger and stronger, with people saying that if you have a CR, then you may not need to operate the neck at all. What happened then was we improved in our radiology as well. CT scan, they found some characteristics where they could say that patient has a CR and you could avoid the neck dissection alone. So radiologists got better at their job, and they found out criteria such as lymph node which is less than 15 millimeters and no focal heterogeneity, or a lymph node which is less than 10 millimeters. These patients have a negative predictive value of 91 or 92%. That means you could safely observe them. They have a CR. They are unlikely to have pathologically positive nodes in the neck, even if you dissect them. That gave us an impetus for observing the neck after a CR. Then we went further. Radiology improved further with the advent of metabolic and structural imaging, a combination of the two in the form of the FDG PET CT imaging. Again, a trial or a study from Tata Hospital showed a very high negative predictive value. So what was happening was that the treatment modality was increasing. CT-RT was giving you better and better control rates, response rates in CR rates. You were improving your imaging modality with better CT scanning and a combination of metabolic and systemic scanning with the PET CT scan imaging. That led to this article from Ferlito et al., who say, and I draw you to the main part of the article, what they said was that patients who undergo primary chemoradiation, because of the improvements in locoregional control of patients undergoing primary chemoradiation and improvement in diagnostic technology, we have increased the ability to detect low volume persistent tumor in the post-treatment period. When neck dissection is necessary for persistent or recurrent disease, recent studies have shown that selective or super selective neck dissection may produce equal results. So what they said was that we were improving our therapeutic results, and also they said that there is no benefit of planned neck dissection after complete response. So this Ferlito's article told us exactly what we were thinking, that because the treatment response is improving, because the radiology was improving, we need not do planned neck dissection if you have a complete CR. If you don't have a CR, then you needed to do a neck dissection. While we were looking at this, we did not yet have level 1 evidence, which then came at 2015, a presentation at the ASCO and a following publication in the NEJM of this article, PET CT surveillance versus neck dissection in advanced head and neck cancers, by Hisham Mehana. A simple trial design. What they did was they had T1 to T4 tumors, primary tumors, with high node disease, which was N2 to N3. They split them into two arms. One was planned neck dissection and one was PET CT surveillance after receiving primary chemoradiotherapy to the primary. The planned neck dissection, again, please observe that they were not sure whether to operate before or operate after CT-RT. So when you had planned neck dissection, they left it to the surgeon either to operate before or operate after. In the surveillance group, once the patient received the primary treatment, the patient underwent a PET CT, and those who had complete responders were observed, and those who had incomplete or equivocal disease underwent salvage neck dissection. Now I will tell you what is equivocal neck disease. So after chemoradiation, patients who were in the observation arm or the PET CT arm underwent a PET CT at 12 weeks. Those who had a CR were observed. In the planned neck dissection arm, it was left to the investigators whether to operate the patients 4 weeks prior to CT-RT or within 4 to 8 weeks after CT-RT. How do you define equivocal response? Well, equivocal response was defined as a mild FTG uptake in normal nodes or no uptake in a structurally abnormal node. So the node had to be equivocal in terms of either a metabolic uptake or a structural abnormality. These were equivocal response. Radiologists could not definitely tell us whether they were CRs or they were incomplete response. So these were equivocal responses, and all these patients underwent neck dissection. I draw your attention, well, the baseline characteristics were balanced as normally seen in a randomized trial. But I draw your attention to two things. One, majority of the patients, 85% of the patients were oropharyngeal cancers in this study, and most of the and very few N3 disease. Majority were N2A, N2B, and N2C. very few N3 disease. So keep these two in mind and we'll talk about it a little later. So 282 patients in each arm, the surveillance arm and the planned neck dissection arm. Overall survival, which was the primary endpoint of the study, was not different in the two arms. The 2-year overall survival was 84.9% in the surveillance arm and it was 81.5% in the planned neck dissection arm. So there was no difference in the overall survival. When the authors looked at neck dissection, whether it was done before or after CTRT, again, there was no difference in the two arms. So you could do neck dissection before or after. We already have seen that it does not compromise survival. We already have seen that the complication rates and the local control is the same. So there was no difference whether you did the neck before or after chemoradiation. They looked at a subset of HPV positive. As I told you, 85% of the patients were oropharynx, and hence it was obvious that majority of them would be HPV positive. So when they tested patients for HPV status, they tested 446 out of the 582. 79% of these were positive. So 335 out of 446 were positive, that is 75%. They tested 79, 75% were positive for HPV. Then they looked at HPV positive versus HPV negative. So when they looked at the HPV positive subset and looked at the PET-CT surveillance versus planned neck dissection arm, again, there was no difference in the overall survival. And this was also true for the HPV negative arm. So even if you're HPV negative, there was no difference whether you underwent PET-CT surveillance or you had a neck dissected after complete response. So it did not matter whether you're HPV positive or HPV negative as far as this trial goes. So what did the PET neck study, as it is called, tell us? That PET-CT guided surveillance was non-inferior to planned neck dissection. So if you have a CR, you need not do neck dissection. You are not compromising survival. The patients in the PET-CT group underwent fewer neck dissections. As planned neck dissection, all patients underwent neck dissection. A lot of patients were spared the morbidity of neck dissection if you kept them under surveillance with the PET-CT. And the surveillance, PET-CT surveillance was more cost effective in the long run. These were the findings of the PET neck study and gave us a level 3 evidence of observing patients who had a CR to primary chemoradiation or radiation therapy. Well, are all responses same? We all know that oropharynx behaves, HPV positive oropharynx behaves completely differently from tobacco-induced oropharyngeal tumors. They have a better survival. Though they come with large nodal disease, they have a better survival. Is the nodal response then different when you have a HPV positive status? And I draw your attention to Brian O'Sullivan's paper, which looked at the temporal nodal regression and regional control after primary radiation for N2, N3 HPV positive, stratified by HPV status. They looked at HPV positive and HPV negative. What this study did was they stratified into HPV positive versus HPV negative. Only look at the non-CR in the HPV positive. Don't get confused here. Look at the non-CR in the HPV positive and see that even if you had a non-CR and you did not undergo a neck dissection in the HPV positive, the relapse rate was equal to if you underwent a neck dissection. I'll clarify that further. So even if you are HPV positive and the black line is HPV positive non-CR, that means you do not have a complete response. The control rate was similar to if you have a HPV positive CR and even if you have a HPV negative CR. So HPV positive non-complete response had similar control rates to a HPV positive control complete response and even a HPV negative complete response. HPV negative non-CR had obviously a poorer survival. So what was happening? Something was different. If you have a HPV positive tumor and you have a non-CR at 12 weeks, it does not mean that you'll have a poorer. So maybe you don't need to operate these patients. That this is what this trial was telling us, that the HPV positive cancers continue to involute beyond 12 weeks. So 12 weeks may not be the right time to investigate the patients for residual neck disease in HPV positive oropharyngeal tumors. So what they observed was that, or they came out with guidelines saying that if you have a HPV positive tumors And if you do a PET scan at 8 to 12 weeks, if it was N3, then you should undergo a neck dissection. But if you have an incomplete response with N3, you should undergo neck dissection. But if you have an N2 disease and an incomplete response, you can continue to observe these patients and do a scan at every 2 months. If you have a complete response, then you can observe the patient. If you have progression, you operate the patient. And if you have a stable disease or there is continued involution, you can do a continued surveillance. So what this study was telling us was that HPV positive neck nodal disease responds differently than HPV negative neck nodal disease. And evaluation at 12 weeks may be too early because these nodes continue to involute further, and evaluation at 18 weeks can spare some more neck dissections in HPV positive tumors. Hot off the press, going ahead on the same topic, ongoing surveillance for PET-CT. This has just come in April 2020 or May 2020. This paper talks about ongoing surveillance with PET-CT for HPV positive tumors. Again, they graded the response as CR, equivocal response, exactly what Hisham Mehana had defined it as, and incomplete response. In the equivocal response, they did not do neck dissection in 98 patients. And they had no difference in survival between those who had a CR HPV positive or an equivocal response. So what it told us, or what it reiterated, was that in an HPV positive tumor, you may not do a neck dissection even if you have an incomplete response at 12 weeks. You can continue to observe these patients and do a response assessment again at 18 weeks and keep the patient under surveillance. So do we have an answer what to do? The PET neck level 3 evidence told us that if you have a CR and you need not operate these patients, though we do not know whether to operate the equivocal response yet. Let's look at the limitations of the study. Majority, as I said, were oropharyngeal cancers. In the Indian subcontinent, we do not see so many oropharynx and mainly HPV positive tumors. If you look at the neck nodal disease, there was very few N3 nodal disease. So we cannot extrapolate these results to N3 nodal disease, and you must continue to operate N3 nodal disease. As I said, majority of these tumors, oropharyngeal and HPV positive. And we know that the response rates in HPV positive, which are more cystic, is different from HPV negative tumors. So the question is, can we extrapolate these results to HPV negative tumors? And again, the question, one more question that arises is, do we need to operate all equivocal response? Because even if you have equivocal response, only 50% of them will be pathologically positive for tumors. So can we do something more in patients? Of course, CR, clearly we can observe. Equivocal response, the current trend is to operate, but can we do something more to observe this patient is the next question that we need to answer as we go ahead and do our trials. And there comes the role of ultrasonography. Well, it is not yet established, but there are authors which have looked at the role of ultrasonography in the post-recurrent setting to tell us whether these equivocal nodal response are ghost cells or there are viable cells with a good accuracy of ultrasound-guided FNAC at detecting residual persistent cancer at about 88%. So as we go ahead, we need to investigate whether we need to operate all the patients who have an equivocal response. As I said, a slide on what happens when the primary doesn't respond. Okay, now you've done CTRT, the primary is positive, or there is a recurrence at the primary. What do you do with the neck if the neck is N0? Till now, we looked at all patients who had controlled primary. All the PET neck study was complete response at primary and equivocal response at neck. Now, what happens if you have incomplete response at primary? Do you do neck if it is N0? Well, if you look at studies and look at this meta-analysis, it tells us that the occult positivity rate, if you have N0 post chemoradiation, is about 11% only. Even we looked at our patients at Tata Hospital and we found a 10% occult positive rate. And we did a multivariate analysis and we found that if you had a pre-treatment node positive, that is pre-CTRT, the chances of having a pathological node is positive. And even these patients, a PET-CT may serve as a guide. So exactly the same guidelines that you follow for controlled primary, you can also apply to if the primary is not controlled and the neck is N0. Finally, coming to if you have to operate the neck, what is the extent of neck dissection? Do you do a radical neck dissection? Do you clear from level 1 to 5, or is selective neck dissection enough in the salvage settings? Well, Robbins has done a lot of study, Dr. Robbins, looking at super selective neck dissection following chemoradiation for head and neck cancers. And what they told us in these 35 patients, that there was no difference or the survival or regional recurrence was not different if you do a selective neck dissection. So clearly, the message is that you have to operate one level more than the level that is involved. So you can do a selective neck dissection and preserve all the essential structures. You don't need to, if you have level 1 positive, you can do level 1, 2, and 3. You don't need to go to level 4 and level 5. Unless you have level 4 positive, then only you operate level 5. So the dictum is one level more, and selective neck dissection is enough in the post-radiation setting as well. You do not have to do a modified radical neck dissection always. So to conclude, let me bring your attention to this consensus statement, which was got long back before the PET neck trial was published. And Dr. D'Cruz has been a part of this Asian consensus. And what it looked at was resource countries which have all the resources, guidelines for them, versus countries which do not have all the resources, that all countries may not, or areas may not have a PET-CT. What do you do there? So if you have N1 disease, in the salvage setting, it is clear that if you have a complete response, and most of them will have complete response, you can safely observe these patients. You did not do a neck dissection for N1 disease. What do you do with N2 disease? If N2 disease, if you don't have a PET-CT, if you have a PET-CT, well and good. If you don't have a PET-CT, you can do only a contrast-enhanced CT scan. And if that shows a complete response, you can still observe these patients and do not need to do a neck dissection. For N3 disease, most of the authors agree that you need to do a neck dissection. And even in the era of PET-CT, because the PET neck trial had very few patients of N3, the current guideline is to do a planned neck dissection for all N3. And we keep evolving this guidelines. Well, type of surgery, though they had 2009 had no consensus, but nowadays majority of the studies tell us that selective neck dissection is adequate treatment for residual neck disease or equivocal neck disease in the neck. So to conclude, we have improved response rates with intense regimes, and we will continue to have these with targeted therapies and other therapies coming in, better combinations of chemotherapy with radiation therapy, so the response rates are going to increase. We have improved diagnostics with PET-CT, better CT scanning, better criteria to tell us whether there is complete response or not. And now we can avoid neck dissection majority of advanced, even in majority of advanced node disease, even if it is advanced. So clearly now, there is no debate whether to do it before or after. We must give CTRT first and look at and assess the response. If you have a CR up to N2, you do not need to operate the neck. If you have an equivocal response, that is an area of active research, whether to operate the neck or though, and we should be doing more research in that area. If you have incomplete response, you must operate the neck. Currently, the guideline for equivocal response is to operate the neck, but that keeps evolving as you get, as you add in FNAC or get better imaging techniques. Accurate selection of patients who benefit the most is the area of active research. So I thank all of you for your patient listening, and Rudresh, if there are any questions, I would like to answer them.
Yeah, it's very nice and informative talk, sir. There are a few questions actually.
Yes.
One thing is, sir, in forestry trial, how many had functional larynx after chemo-RT?
Well, they have not given functional larynx in VA trial. They did not talk about functionality of the larynx. So 64% had larynx preservation. The definition of larynx preservation was intact organ with function and anatomy and function. So 64% was the larynx preservation rate, which meant that both the organ and the anatomical and functional preservation was there. That was 64% in the VA trial versus RTOG was about 83%.
Sir, one more question is for N1 and N2 disease,
Yes.
is surgery is not better? Surgery is better than chemotherapy because we all know that we have a systemic side effect with the chemotherapy.
Right.
So the question is whether surgery can be better than chemo or chemotherapy.
Yes. So that was the debate I told you in the RT era where we did split therapy. What the candidate is talking about is exactly what I said, split therapy. That many surgeons have this apprehension that necrotic nodal disease, large nodal disease will not respond to radiation or chemoradiation, and you need to take out this and then treat the patient with chemoradiation. But Rudresh, let me draw your attention to the trial of post-op treatment, the RTOG and the EORTC trial, which tell us that if you have extranodal disease, and most of these N2 and N3 will have extranodal disease, you then need to add chemoradiation in the post-operative setting. So anyway, if you do surgery upfront, you will need to do trimodality treatment. And now, as I presented, majority of these will have a good response. And if you have a CR, and if you do a PET at 12 weeks, which tells you it has a CR, then you need not operate the necks. If you have anything less than a CR, you can operate the neck, and it will reduce the number of neck dissections you do. If you unnecessarily operate before CTRT, the number of neck dissections that you do will have to be large. Majority of patients will land up with radical neck dissection. The morbidity of surgery will be high. So clearly give CTRT, we have good response rates, and more importantly, we have a good modality to assess the response rates in the form of the PET-CT, and you can avoid neck dissections in men.
Sir, one more. Sir, what is your take on super selective neck dissection?
Correct. That's exactly the paper that Robbins wrote about. They said that if you have level 1 neck, see there is also a concept called nidisectomy which is coming in. Nidisectomy means that people are saying that because radiation sterilizes the field, you can only go in and remove the neck disease that is remaining. Well, that has not yet been proven. So currently the guidelines say that you need to do a selective neck dissection. Katie Robbins wrote about super selective, which is removing one nodal disease more than the involved node, and showed us that the control rates were good. But in my opinion, whether it's super selective, removing 2 and 3 doesn't add to morbidity. So a selective neck dissection is good enough for patients who have a residual nodal disease. You don't need to do a modified radical or a radical neck dissection in these patients, unless some of the structures are involved by the tumor.
And sir, it's my doubt is
Yes.
when you're planning a salvage surgery for recurrent head and neck cancers.
Right.
So for N0 disease, is there
Yes.
a role of elective neck surgery, elective neck dissection for a salvage?
So Rudresh, it again depends on which site you're looking at. There are various factors that you need to take into consideration, Rudresh. One, the site of the disease. 2 is what was the pre-chemoradiation status of the neck. If it is N0 now, was it N1, was it N2A, was it N3 earlier? That is very important. So as you said, that if it is a glottic tumor, what is the stage of the recurrent tumor? So all these are very important. And as I said earlier, you can apply the same principle of PET scan. Most of these patients will undergo PET-CT in many centers. If the PET is negative to the neck, let us take the example of laryngeal cancers. The occult positivity rate is 10%. So you do need, if you have earlier disease which was N0 or N plus pre-CTRT, and now the PET is showing N0, you need not operate the neck in this case. If the earlier disease was N2 or N3, then you may consider to do a ipsilateral neck dissection. Is that clear, Rudresh?
Yes, yes, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, one more question from Vijay.
Yes.
How do we assess complete response?
So complete response is absence of metabolic uptake and no structural abnormality on the CT aspect of the PET-CT. So it's a combination of both metabolic and CT scan and also clinical. So it's a clinical radiological assessment. If it is PET-CT, if it is CT alone, then I showed you the criteria of less than 15 millimeters with no heterogeneity, or less than 10 millimeter node, which they tell you as complete response. So there's some criteria on CT scan and on the PET-CT criteria, which tell you it is either CR, it is equivocal response, or it is CR, or it is incomplete response. So there are 3 categories.
Yes, sir. And the last question I would ask, is surveillance with PET-CT cost effective in developing countries like us?
Well, good question. Mehana's trial said it is. In our country, there is no study to say that. but the current teaching is to do a PET CT once at 12 weeks and then do an XC. Rudresh, the continued PET surveillance is only for HPV positive. We don't do it for HPV negative. Okay. So if HPV negative, you have a equivocal response at 12 weeks, the current consensus is to go ahead and operate. You don't need to repeat a PET CT. That is only for HPV positive, not for HPV negative.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Right.
I now hand it over to Akshay.
Yeah. So thank you, Rudresh, for the wonderful moderation, and thank you, Chaukar sir, for the great presentation as always.
Thank you, Akshay.
Thank you all the participants. Kindly note there for the next meeting where there is a change in the schedule. So for the Thursday meeting, next meeting by Dr. Pratimesh Pai, we are doing it in the evening. That is between 7 to 8. The topic is the management of carotid artery neck dissection. So thank you, sir. Thank you, Rudresh, for participating.
There's one question here that if vital structure is involved post-RT, encased in fibrous tissue, salvage will be preserved or sacrificed. So yeah, good question. Sometimes when you operate the neck post radiation, close to the disease, you may have fibrous tissue. Now, in such a case, it is very difficult to tell whether there is extranodal spread from the tumor or this is just plain fibrosis. This is the last chance, remember, that you have to gain control when you're doing it in the salvage setting. So in my opinion, you need to remove that disease, that vital structure, if it is encased, unless it is, of course, the carotid artery, which you can't remove, but IJV or the nerve must be sacrificed if you cannot get a clear plane between the disease and that important structure. So don't try to leave back crummy tissue thinking that this is fibrosis. You can never know whether it's fibrosis or not. So any structure that is involved, please excise it.
So I think Rudresh, are there any questions which are left answered? Shalini, are there any questions which are left unanswered?
Yes, sir. I think there are one or two more questions. One being for oral disease, oral cancer with an N3 node. Would you prefer to go ahead with surgery first or prefer radiation?
So as I said, oral disease is the only area which is now left with the surgeons, I think. So clearly in oral disease, surgery is the treatment modality upfront. There is absolutely no debate. If any oral cancer is operable, please go ahead and do surgery. No oral cancer is to be treated with chemoradiation if it is operable. If it is not operable, it's a different ballgame altogether. But oral disease is still with the surgeons. So please operate oral cancers, even if there is advanced nodal disease.
Thank you, sir. Also, Dr. Ali Azad from Bangladesh asks a few questions. He's asked us about nasopharyngeal carcinomas. So he asked whether for the neck we should go ahead with upfront neck dissection or neck dissection after a planned neck dissection after CTRT.
So nasopharynx is one tumor where which is inherently very sensitive to chemoradiation. That is why the treatment of nasopharyngeal cancer was chemoradiation. And now there is evidence to say that if you have a bulky tumor at the primary or the nodes, the treatment would be induction chemotherapy followed by CTRT. With this treatment regime, majority of the tumors will respond. You will not have a nodal disease seen in the neck. So clearly for nasopharynx, even if you have a bulky nodal disease in the neck, please do not operate the neck. First give chemoradiation, induction chemo followed by chemoradiation, which is the current standard protocol for bulky disease. And if there is residual disease, follow the same protocol. Do a PET CT. If there's residual disease in the neck, only then do a salvage neck dissection. So please do not do a upfront neck dissection in nasopharynx.
Sir, one more question.
Yes.
How long to continue surveillance in HPV positive node with residual disease picked on first PET CT after 12 weeks?
Right. So well, that is an area of debate. It is not yet standardized. But what they say is that at 12 weeks, if you have equivocal response, if you have residual disease, which is a bright uptake on PET or a structural incomplete response, you must operate. There's no question. But if you have an equivocal response, then you repeat the PET scan at 18 weeks. So after 2 months. If there is complete response, don't do anything. If the response is the same, that means there is no increase, you can keep the patient for PET surveillance and do a PET scan after 2 months again. So you can continue to keep the patient on the PET surveillance 2 months and then decrease or increase the frequency or decrease the frequency. I mean, you can do a PET later at 6 months. So if the disease is static, then you know that these are not viable cells. The equivocal response can be observed in a HPV positive. So at 2 months interval for the first 2 or 3 times, you do a PET CT.
I think the last.
Sir,
Sorry.
one more.
Yes.
Sir, actually, related to the earlier question regarding the response to following the chemo RT, we know that PET CT is a better modality, imaging modality for assessment of response. So, is there a role for we need to confirm this response with FNAC, or if there is a significant response with PET, we need not to address the neck. We can observe without any fear of thinking that there is a residual disease left behind.
So Rudresh, to answer that, if you have a complete response, it is very unlikely that ultrasound will show any disease in the neck. So you're not going to target an FNAC. You're not going to get any disease to target. For equivocal response, especially in PET negative, the current teaching is to go and operate. So there's no need to do an ultrasound. It is an area of investigation, as I said, whether we can observe some of these equivocal response by doing an FNAC. So you do an FNAC, you do some markers like Ki67, which is not a standard marker yet. But if you see ghost cells, that means the nucleus does not stain, then you know this is a dead cell. Though it picked up something, it is an equivocal response, but it's a dead cell. If the nucleus stains on HNE, then you know that this tumor is actively dividing or it's proliferating. That means it is active, viable tumor cells, and then you need to operate them. So you do an FNAC, if at all, in equivocal response, you want to still continue to observe. But the current treatment is to operate all equivocal responses and incomplete responses. Complete response, no need to do an ultrasound FNAC.
Thank you very much, sir, actually.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Once again,
Thanks,
please.
Akshay.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Once again, please note the change in the timing for the Thursday's meeting. It has been shifted to 7 to 8 p.m. And the speaker is Professor Pratimesh Pai from Tata Memorial Hospital, who will be speaking about the management of the carotid in neck dissection. Thank you, Chaukar, sir. Thank you, Rudresh, for the wonderful talk and moderation. Thank you, sir.
Akshay.
Bye, Akshay.
Bye, sir.